So I already showed you guys how to make a silicone mold, but this is a new, improved, and better method using this Hershey chocolate bar. So I'm going to be doing a Hershey mold. What you're going to need to do first is take whatever you are going to be molding, and my way is going to be the chocolate, and I'm going to show you how to cut the chocolate into pieces. So what I did is I just took the knife and gave little ridges in between all the chocolate bars, and it made it way easier for them to snap. Then you can just dust off all of the different shavings. After that's done, another method that you could do is just simply by taking the chocolate bar and snapping it in half. The only reason that I like to give more ridges in between the chocolate bar is because if you just snap it in half, you will not get precise lines, and they will be chunky and crooked and just not the way that I wanted mine to look. So I decided to show you guys how to cut the frozen chocolate. And yes, I froze it into the freezer just so that it'd be hard and wouldn't start melting while working with the silicone. I actually think it would be easier though if you cut your chocolate before putting it in the freezer, because it was very stiff and hard because it was frozen. But then I have all of my chocolate pieces and I'm ready to start the mold. I have this rolling pin with guidelines, so I will be using the 3mm guidelines, and then I also needed to use some sculpty clay. So the sculpty clay is going to be the base where you are going to pour the silicone. So I'm going to use my roller and just roll over the clay to make it nice and flat and level. This clay is very stiff, so it works well for what we are doing, but it'll be easier if you guys knead it out like I am doing here, just so it'll be easier to work with and roll out as the time being. After it was all kneaded, I started to roll it out into the size of a cookie cutter. I got this metal cookie cutter pack off of Amazon, and I will leave you guys a link down in the description. So basically you just need like some kind of metal walls, and then they are reusable, so that's also a plus. After the clay is rolled out to the size that you need for your cookie cutter, you are just going to lightly press it into the clay. Don't actually press it all the way through, because then you can just cut the clay in half. And then what you are going to do with your cookie cutter lightly press into the clay is you're going to need to make sure that it is sealed at the bottom. So I just took my finger and pressed the clay up against the cookie cutter and also pressed against the parchment paper. Now that your mold and your wall is all set up and ready, you are just going to take your frozen chocolate straight out of the freezer, and then I also plugged in my heat gun just to make sure it's extra secured to the clay. What you're going to do is add a small bit of the hot glue down to whatever you are going to be making a mold of, and then also try to press that lightly into the clay. When doing this, you definitely want to make sure that it is secured down to the clay, or else it'll float, so make sure that is literally pressed into the clay. Now it's time to mix the silicone. I will be using the same kit from the last video if you guys haven't seen that already. It's the Part A and Part B silicone rubber by the brand Let's Resin. And then what I'm going to do is you are going to need an even ratio of the two mixtures to make sure that it sets up well. So I did a half a cup of Part A, and then after Part A was in, I also did a half a cup of Part B, and a total of 1 cup of liquid. After all of my Part A and Part B was in the container, I just took a wood popsicle stick and stirred it for a continuous 3 minutes. Make sure that your mixture is all well mixed together, and also when mixing, scrape the sides. After you know that it is all mixed together, pour it slowly in one corner and let it seep through the rest of the chocolate, just so that you know that all of it is continuously being poured into the mold and covered. And then after that is done, just let it sit up and dry for 24 to 48 hours. After that is done, you should be able to pick up your mold and start removing the clay and the sides of the mold, and then you will be left with a perfect silicone mold. All you need to do then is pop out the chocolate, wash the mold, and then it will be ready for use.